Well, I hope the wind noise isn't too bad, but I was going to go fishing. Bought the spinning gear. It's 1st of April, and yeah, no joke, the conditions weren't great for the mark I had in mind. There was just too much swell, too much colour in the water, a lot of weed about. So yeah, I've had enough experience of fishing in those conditions to know that it's really not really, well, it's just not worth it. Might fluke a bass or something, but there's other things to do that are just as nice. So I thought I'd come along to this very broad expanse of surf beach down on the North Wales coast, down on the Clean Peninsula, and do a bit of beachcombing. And it's always interesting what you find when you beachcomb. You can just sort of look at this vast expanse of sand and think, well, it kind of looks pretty barren, but when you open your eyes, you nearly always find something interesting. And you know, I'm not just a fisherman, I also I love marine biology. I am a marine biologist, that's what I trained in. So I find this fascinating, and it's just lovely to be out. There's an amazing surf running today. We've got offshore winds, cross offshore winds. It's a good surf for some surfing, though I do surf. I don't have my board with me today, but if you can see here, I don't have, well, I'll try and get a better view later up on the headland, but we have an offshore wind, and then normally an offshore wind flattens the sea, but because this particular beach faces thousands of miles out into the Atlantic, then it picks up the Atlantic swells. And at the moment there's a big low pressure about 1,000 miles off, 500 miles off, something like that, out in the Atlantic, and that's sending in this 5 to 6 foot swell. Probably the camera's flattening the size of these waves, but they're pretty sizable. So yeah, just lovely to be out. It's so fresh, something about the salt air, the ozone, the freshness of it all. And it's been a long winter, so it's much needed kind of clearing away the cobwebs of winter and looking forward to a long summer. So it's going to be interesting to see what we find. Might not be much, might see a few interesting things, but either way it's going to be a nice walk. I will say though, this beach occasionally throws up some good bass. I believe that on occasion also fishing with fish baits, sand eel or mackerel strip, you can pick up the turbot. Normally turbot from the shore, they're not that big, up to a pound maybe, but it's a nice and relatively rare catch. I think there's plenty of them there, just, you know, I just don't think it's fished very regularly, and so you don't really hear about it. But I think if you fish this beach a lot, you would pick them up reasonably frequently, the turbot, and then also the bass. I've not fished it myself, but it looks, you know, it looks a pretty promising beach for surf fishing. Classic surf fishing, you know, wading out a little bit, standing with your rod in the surf, casting out to the third breaker they say. But I just, when I fish these beaches, I just fish about 70 yards out. It's my standard cast, and it always seems to be about the right distance. It's not about chucking out as far as you can. The bass are in here not just because the surf is making it difficult for all the fish that it feeds on and the shrimps. It kind of disorientates them. But what this surf does, it also puts a fizz into the sea, and that fizz, think of it, you know, you can see here, this sort of fizzing water. It's a more oxygenated environment, and it makes the fish more active. So there's just more oxygen running over their gills. They're extracting more oxygen from the water. It gives them more energy, and I think it just gives them that kind of hunting boost. But there is a sort of threshold at which the surf just becomes too much, and then it's not great. And I would say today we're kind of on the edge of that surf just being maybe a little bit too much. A bit smaller than this would be absolutely perfect. Flounders as well, you get probably get some good flounders off this beach as well. Right, I've got to go back and try and find where on earth I left my shoes. There they are. Yeah, I've got a scallop shell here. Scallop or scallop, however you say it. Worn down a bit, but pretty good condition. I think I'll keep that. It'd be a nice souvenir for the day. I love the driftwood you find when you're beachcombing. There's nothing like it. kind of weather beaten, sand blasted, dried out pieces of driftwood, that beautiful bleached colour. So a lot of people take this kind of stuff home and actually salvage it and make driftwood furniture out of it. You collect enough pieces, get it dried out, and this is already dry because it's up, you know, beyond the tide line. I don't know how long this has been. Like I say, sand blasted, bleached, really nice. You find some amazing driftwood sometimes. Twisted, gnarled pieces of tree root or branches. Must have been drifting in the ocean for ages, and then they wash up in a storm and get weather beaten and bleached. Now, if we're really lucky today, I doubt it because it's rare, but if we're really lucky, we might find a sea bean. And these sea beans, I'll put a picture up to show you one of the sea beans I found in the beach in Ireland. I think it's from a monkey vine plant. They come from the Amazon, believe it or not. So these beans, they fall into the Amazon River and they flow out into the Atlantic, and then they get picked up by Gulf Stream, and then when the storms come, kind of deviates them off the Gulf Stream and into the beaches on the west coast, the western seaboard of Europe, especially Ireland and the Outer Hebrides are hot spots for beachcombing. You can find some amazing sea beans, and Cornwall as well, and some people have actually grown them. Now I wonder if the hamburger bean I've got, which I think is what it's actually termed as, would ever grow, but it's my only one and I just keep it as a souvenir. And then if you're really lucky, you might find a bit of ambergris, which is basically whale vomit, but it's very prized by the perfumery industry, and it's an essential ingredient I believe in very small doses of many perfumes. And like if you find a kind of a big lump of ambergris, kind of like this big, well, it can be worth tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of pounds, but it can also be confused with lumps of palm oil as well. So if you do find a kind of vomit colored kind of lump of stuff that could be ambergris, don't get too excited. Now it looks like we've got some mermaid purses here, which is the common term for the egg cases, in this case of some kind of elasmobranch such as a bullhuss or a dogfish. And this kind of coil here is what would have been attached to something like a kelp frond or something like that, and the case incubates the animal until it hatches. But they're beautiful things. There's a few of them here. There's one there, another one here, there's a couple here as well. There's quite a few here. Obviously, probably this is a piece of a large raft of seaweed to which all of these egg cases were attached. Unfortunately, the little animals in them weren't to be. Yeah, that water's pretty cold, but very refreshing. I would say it's the 1st of April today, so I would say this water can't be much more than 9 or 10 degrees centigrade. In the middle of summer it might get up to about 17 or 18. It never really gets that warm here. So it's cold, but it's refreshing. Feels like you're washing away a long winter. Right, sorry about any wind noise, but this gives you an overview, a good vista of where I'm at. Again, I don't think this camera is going to do any justice to the size of this swell. I mean, it's not huge, but it's a decent swell. There are a couple of surfers out there, way out there, but it's very difficult, other than when you see a surfer on a wave, to give any scale to these. But like I say, it's a decent swell. It's nicely lined up. The problem is the wind. When this beach fills in at high tide in the evening, I imagine the wind will slacken off a bit. I think the waves are going to be really beautiful then. But you know, you can see a peak out there. There's obviously some sandbar there. It's a nice peak. Dolphin here, and it looks pretty old, but interesting to see. I wonder why it got washed up. It might just be natural causes. Maybe it's got caught in some fishing gear. I don't see any signs of that. So this is a bit gruesome for you, but it's very interesting. You can see it's exposed bone here. Some quite sharp teeth they have. You can see that. And then there's this characteristic light area, which is much lighter than that when it's alive. Interesting. It's like I say, it's just really interesting what you find when you go on a beachcombing trip like this. And you open your eyes and you just look around. It looks like you're not going to see anything interesting, and then the world opens up to you when you really start looking. Well, I was hoping to find one of these, although unfortunately not intact, but many of you will recognise this as being the cuttle bone of a cuttlefish, which is a marine mollusk, and it's cephalopod, squid, cuttlefish, octopus, and this bone is used by the cuttlefish to control its buoyancy, but also, other than the cuttlefish being prized to eat by many people, and also the ink sometimes is used in art and also for cooking. These are the bones, the cuttle bones that you find in pet shops that your budgerigars use. Sometimes, although obviously not today, but sometimes thousands of these are along the beach. But those events are rare. They're nice to see. Well, that's the end of the walk. I'm going to head back to the car now. Hope you found that refreshing. Pleasant little interlude into your day. It certainly was for me. Like I say, really blew away the cobwebs. Of course, I love fishing, I love surfing. Sometimes it's nice just to keep things simple. Just go out for a walk and observe your surroundings and just enjoy nature. The sights, the sounds, the smells. Really beautiful. Okay, thanks very much for watching, everybody, and till the next time, bye bye.